Jesus. Why are they still in there? Should they be evacuating?
Just be okay.
Of course.
You're gonna be okay. Hi. You're gonna be okay.
This is a hospital having to evacuate.
All right, dude. Yeah, let's get out of here. We tried, bro. I'm sorry. We tried our best. Yeah, and when this tree falls, it's over. Sorry, bro.
Like hell, and you can see the embers blowing. The wind is what's spreading all these fires because
It's the
such
Santa
high
Ana
winds.
winds.
Yeah. That's the Getty Villa, the famous art museum.
Did that burn?
I believe they did have some structural damage to the museum, yeah.
And Wiley's Chelada. Oh, please. That's heartbreaking.
Okay, I guess let's park along this street, yeah? And then
Some of the aftermath.
just,
Oh, my.
go ahead of us and try to set up safe.
Nothing left.
Right here. This is where it's got to be. This is, oh my God. What? I've never, look at this.
So obviously just absolutely devastating. The LA County Fire Chief spoke this morning. I'm going to play you some footage from his press conference this morning. He does say in this press conference that there had been no fatalities. Unfortunately, of course, since this press conference, there have been 2 confirmed dead as a result of these fires. Unfortunately, we don't expect that to be a complete count, but that's a little update from this morning. But here he is explaining the extent of the damage as of 11:13 a.m. on the East Coast.
Anthony Maroney. I am the County of Los Angeles Fire Chief, and I'm also the Region 1 Coordinator for Fire and Rescue Resources. I'm going to be giving an update on the Palisades Fire in addition to the Eaton Fire, although I am aware that we have 4 large fires burning in LA County at this time. The Palisades Fire is located in both LA City and LA County. We are in unified command with the City of Los Angeles Fire Department in addition to CAL FIRE. We have well over 5,000 acres that have burned, and the fire is growing. We have no percentage of containment. We have an estimated 1,000 structures destroyed, and also no reported fatalities, and a high number of significant injuries to residents who did not evacuate, in addition to first responders who are on the fire line. We have over 1,000 personnel assigned, and the cause of the fire is unknown. However, it is under investigation.
So, DD Geopolitics tweets out a quote from Rick Caruso, who's a former mayoral candidate in Los Angeles. We're like a third world country. We don't have water to put out the fire. That is one of many legitimate complaints that he has. We'll play this video here. This is him calling in to TV News.
Devastating. But what is most concerning to me is our first responders and our firefighters. We've got a mayor that's out of the country, and we've got a city that's burning, and there's no resources to put out fires. So if you look at your pictures, you don't see the firefighters there because there's nothing they can do. And it looks like we're in a third world country here. Mm-hmm. And we've got a lot of tough questions that we need to ask the mayor and the city council and our representatives and the county representatives. Why didn't you work to mitigate this? What was your brush mitigation program?
Okay, so we have another segment that we're going to do in a little while, which gets more into the question of the water running out. We touch upon it a little later in this segment, though. But if you notice, he did say the mayor is out of the country. That's right. LA mayor slammed for ignoring fire warnings to travel to Ghana as lack of water and preparation fueled tragic Palisades blazes. That's right. So Mayor Karen Bass was not only not in the city at the time that these fires broke out, she was across the world. Furious Los Angelenos have blasted their mayor for traveling to Ghana while the city burns, despite having ample warning about critical weather conditions in the days before. Mayor Karen Bass flew out to attend the West African country's presidential inauguration on Tuesday after meteorologists warned that a recipe for fire was on track to strike LA. So, as you can see, here is a tweet from NWS Los Angeles, January 6th, 5:16 p.m. Eastern Time, our time zone here. Here's a little more details on the upcoming wind event. The strongest wind areas of LA and Ventura counties will see widespread north to northeast wind gusts of 50 to 80 miles an hour, with isolated gusts of 80 to 100 miles an hour in the mountains and foothills. So here's one of the graphics that was embedded in that tweet, where you could see potential damaging mountain wave activity and windstorm. And if you look in italics about 3/4 of the way down on the slide on the right-hand side, it says this could be the strongest north wind since November-December 2011 event. So you had potential wind surges, record high dating back 14 years. 14 years. So the highest and most dangerous winds in over a decade were predicted. And obviously, Karen Bass knew about this because she retweeted that very tweet and said there is an expected destructive and potentially life-threatening windstorm starting Tuesday morning through Wednesday afternoon. Red flag, no parking restrictions will go into effect in certain areas tomorrow morning. Stay safe, LA. I won't be there.
Hakuna Matata, bitches.
Yeah. Good luck. Yeah, exactly. Good luck. Now I'm off to West Africa. Yep, that's real. She also retweets this. Today is a red flag day and high winds are expected across the LA region. Streets LA crews are prepared and will work as quickly as possible to respond to respond to service requests. Pardon me. Mayor Karen Bass also, as you can see highlighted in the upper portion of that slide, retweeted that. So she knew that this was a severe and historic wind event that was going to be visiting her city. Combined with, of course, look at this LA Times article dated January 4th, 2025, just a few days ago. With few storms in 8 months, Southern California swings toward drought. Will rain ever come? So you have a recent history of wildfires, pretty severe fires in Southern California. We've all seen them throughout the past few years, combined with warnings of historically high winds, plus a drought going back most of the past year. I'm not a scientist, but I don't have to be. I understand that is, of course, a recipe for record-setting fires. And so she must have known that as well. So how, given those three things, recent history of devastating fires, record winds, and drought, could you leave the country? Meteorologists had warned this is a recipe for fire, as we will get into. Anything to add before we continue?
Well, I understand she had her ticket had the penalty on it if she made any changes.
That's true.
She didn't want to pay the fee.
That's right. That's right. You can blame
Just
those
kind of
those
crossed
ticket
her
fees.
fingers.
Yeah, exactly. To make matters worse, a litany of failures by LA city officials appear to be fueling the out-of-control blaze, which has forced tens of thousands of people to flee some of the city's ritziest enclaves as homes and businesses burn to the ground. Residents have criticized officials for failing to cut off electricity to power lines, as shocking footage shows how energized cables have fueled fires. That's right. Now, this piece of video is Pretty intense. But here is an example of that in action. Hey, LADWP, why are there still energized power lines in Pacific Palisades? Everyone's under evacuation order. This is compounding the problem, as you'll see here. Like I said, this is pretty intense video.
Go ahead. I know. Christy, you're on. I don't know if you can hear us. Christy, you're on. I don't know if you can hear us.
Hey, so just literally seconds ago, we heard a very loud boom, and it was a tree coming down, and it hit those power lines.
Boom.
You can see them sparking. We're trying to get away from them. This is a very, very dangerous situation the firefighters are dealing with. And there was actually an LAPD cruiser going through just as that tree came down, barely missed hitting it. And I want to pan this way and show you, we're actually at Antioch and Swarthmore, and there are buildings here on fire, and these palm trees really underscore the danger. They look beautiful, but when you get those rains of ember, this is what happens. A lot of these trees catch fire very easily. The wind also knocks down some of the palm fronds, and that catches fire everything, or lights on fire everything beneath it. In fact, if we pan down, you can see there are some palm fronds on fire there on the sidewalk. And still, we're seeing people evacuating. Again, the LAPD just came through. They were on the megaphone. They were telling people to leave. And we're hearing booms. I don't know if you just heard that all around us. It appears to be transformers catching fire and blowing up.
That's amazing that you didn't even turn the power lines off.
Yeah.
Just incredible. Well, people have also blasted Los Angeles County for allegedly refusing to refill the reservoirs, meaning fire hydrants are running dry in some areas and leaving firefighters hobbled in their attempts to extinguish the flames. Audio of communications between firefighters confirms that first responders ran out of water in some areas. We have no water. We're doing the best we can up there. We're making sure that people are out of the way. One firefighter can be heard saying, we have this audio that the Daily Mail did obtain.
Operations from Zulu. Zulu, go ahead. Very aware of all those homes. 1075 is working that area. We have no water. We're doing the best we can up there. We're making sure people are out of the way. And until we get water tenders or the water system.
And that's not our error. That is where that audio cuts out. But as you can see, that's the moment he realized we don't have any water. Limited as to what we could do. Doing the best we can. Meteorologists gave plenty of warning that a recipe for fire was on track to strike L.A. as far back as last week. Rich Thompson, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, warned that the region was extremely dry for the time of year because we haven't had any significant rain for months. The fuels are at near critical levels in terms of moisture content, Thompson told the LA Times at the weekend. That's a recipe for fire. Media outlet INKL News said Wednesday morning that Bass was on her way back. Oh, that's nice of her. After the swearing in of Ghana's president, John Dramani Mahama, the day before. Here's some pictures of her enjoying herself in Ghana. I'd say it was a bad day for Los Angeles. It was a great day for the End Wokeness account. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Christmas came a little late this year for him, but there it is. So, yep, there she is enjoying herself in Ghana. And apparently she didn't cut it short. She had to wait for the swearing in of the president before coming back. Of course, just a little added nugget here. John LaFerver and the LA Fire Department sent surplus equipment to Ukraine. Donald Trump Jr. Retweeted this. LA County Fire Department donating surplus supplies to Ukraine's first responders. It seems like there's not any kind of disaster or emergency event where we don't see headlines about funds being diverted to Ukraine. That just became a perfect sort of metaphor for imperial arrogance and ultimately imperial decline. The situation prompted the Los Angeles Fire Department to take the rare step of putting out a plea for off-duty firefighters to help. It was too windy for firefighting aircraft to fly, further hampering the fight. A high wind warning was in effect for the region through 6 p.m., the Weather Service said. And shortly before we came on air, the AP reported the Pacific Palisades fire is now the most destructive in Los Angeles city history, with an estimated 1,000 structures destroyed. So obviously a horror, obviously hell on earth. We hope everybody out there is safe, including people who have helped produce this show. We know Steph posted a video from her parents' home in Pasadena. Obviously, Misha says she's without power. So we hope that you guys making this show happen are safe, as well as all of our viewers out there in Southern California. But just apocalyptic and devastating. And like I said, we're gonna get more into the weeds of the water question in another segment. But I think the main takeaway here is just how negligent the city was. And, obviously there's blame going up the chain to Newsom as well. But you're the mayor of Los Angeles tweeting about a windstorm that's the most dangerous windstorm in over 10 years, combined with the fact that you're in an 8-month drought. My aunt lives in Long Beach, which is, outside of the evacuation zone. But we were texting back and forth with her today and say, yeah, we haven't had rain. We haven't had a drop of rain since May. So that combined with a dangerous windstorm, obviously there's going to be fires. I mean, that's the most foreseeable thing in the world. You leave the country. A, B, you don't have evacuation orders ready to go. You don't warn people, hey, there's a pretty good chance you're going to have to pack up and leave. So get ready. And the third thing, of course, why are the power lines on? Why are the power lines on if there's a mandatory evacuation zone and you know that these high winds are blowing around these embers? To me, that is the main takeaway from this, is just the absolute, just middle finger in the air negligence of leadership, and just absolute lack of any kind of preparation whatsoever.
It's a combination of things. We're seeing this from one end of the country to the other, everywhere that you go. In some ways, what you're describing, the negligence, it's also a symptom of late-stage capitalism where you don't have any money put into infrastructure, put into city services, where all of your leadership is just corrupt and incompetent. Going out to LA, it's like a year ago right now that I was there. And you had floods, actually, when I was there. Jimmy thought I was dead one night because I didn't answer. He thought I got electrocuted because the guest house was flooding out there.
Oh, to have those problems back.
Right. And so now you have these out of control fires. Now, there's been some controversy about whether to blame it on climate change. Any scientist will tell you can't say one particular event is climate change. But overall, I did live in California a while ago, and I'm always curious. So I did research while I was there. And the research I did, and this has gone back over 20 years, it's one of the reasons I didn't seriously consider settling there, because what I dug into basically said the period during which California really gained a large population, and particularly the Los Angeles area, was kind of a Goldilocks period in terms of the weather, that it was unusually wet and unusually suitable for mass habitation relative to the history of the climate in the area, and that generally it's a much drier climate than was during that 100 years. And basically that eventually you would not be able to support populations that size in that region. It was just not natural to that area, that it was going to dry out. You're not going to get enough rain. People aren't going to have enough water. You're going to have fires. That's exactly what it said. 20 years ago, I read this, over 20 years ago. And I said, well, that doesn't seem like a good investment. And I was out of there. So climate change, yes, but that's really for this particular region reverting to norm. What it's been like for the last 100 years has not been normal. It's been unusually habitable.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is obviously it's a desert environment. It's
Right.
going to be dry.
Right.
And from time to time, there's going to be wind. I mean, to the extent that you want to talk about trends in climate, that's essentially baked in, whatever it is, right? It is the second most populous city in the country. And if you are the mayor presiding over it, and you know there have been fires over the past few years, and you know that there's going to be a windstorm the likes of which the city hasn't seen in almost 15 years, and you know it hasn't rained in 8 months, you got to prepare the city better than that. They should not have been caught flat-footed here. Now, look, you want to talk about, because we're going to get into the next segment about water and about irrigation infrastructure, and obviously, like, you could make the argument, I mean, it goes without saying, the more water, the better. Do I know that would have made a difference in terms of mitigating damage when you have factors combining such as they did, meaning the windstorm and the dry conditions? I couldn't tell you that for sure, although, like I said, we'll get more into that later. But what I could say is that, you know, this is just such an insult. I mean, it is just such an insult to know that a perfect storm is brewing for devastating fires, and to fly halfway around the world for a presidential inauguration in a West African country. I mean, how could you do that? How the fuck could you do that? There is just such contempt for the public amongst these people. And then they wonder why they're so hated. They're hated because they hate the people. They hate the public. What other conclusion would you draw? Is that they just don't give a shit about their city?
Well, they have a very aristocratic mindset. Look, I mean, that was something else. I hadn't been to Los Angeles in over 20 years when I went there last year. And the way I described it, I never liked it there. It's just a lot of, I have that Woody Allen reaction to LA. I'm not going to live someplace where the only cultural advantage is that you can make a left turn on a red light. You know, I always hear that about you can make a right turn on. No, doesn't he say left turn? I think he says left turn in any hall.
You're not allowed to make a left turn on a red light anywhere. You got your driver's license back a few months ago, didn't you? You can't go left on red anywhere.
Not after this.
You can go right on red in most places, but for those watching, you cannot turn right on red in New York City.
No, you cannot. So, yeah, but when I went back out there after all of this time, it's like when you see your old enemy with cancer and you feel like, man, I feel bad. Maybe I shouldn't have been so hard on that person. That's how I felt when I went to LA this time. Like when I first went to LA, it was very much the Randy Newman I Love LA video. It was, you love that, you hate it. I hated it. I found it very materialistic and plastic, like a lot of people would describe it that way back then. But it was what it was. If you dug the big boob blonde sitting on the edge of the convertible driving down Hollywood Boulevard, that is what it was. I come back this time, it's like a third world country. And I said to Jimmy, I was like, is it like, okay, so in the last year I've been to India and I've been to Europe. Is it like India? No. But it's more like India than it is like Europe, honestly. Like you could just see how defunded it is. You could see how poorly taken care of it is. And you could see how the conditions have just really become such a grotesque condition of very, very, very rich and just devastatingly poor. Now, in terms of city management, that's a symptom of that just decline in the overall culture of the region, of the city. At the same time, as I was saying, there is a broader trend going on there climactically that there's only so much you could do. If what I read is correct, and it seems increasingly like it was, because they predicted all this back then, this is like a quarter century ago, that ultimately the climate in the area would revert to its norms, and you were going to get this. You were going to get drought, and you were going to get fire, because that's much more typical of the region than this weird little Goldilocks century where you could have a place in Malibu and not worry about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I think that, city mismanagement, I mean, we have that here in New York, too. You have that in Philadelphia. I mean, we see,
Sure.
you see videos all the time, just the squalor that people have to live in all of these major cities. And obviously,
Sure, it's
that
not.
is a
It's not
symptom
just there. I
of
mean,
a broad-based trend.
you see things in New Orleans. But this is what's bizarre. I was talking to Jimmy about this earlier. Like New Orleans, the houses lose value every year. Like that makes sense. You go to New Orleans, man. You go to places where like it's so neglected, the roads are going back to dirt. Like the asphalt just ends. It's going
Yeah.
back to a dirt road. It's been
Well,
so
in
long
LA,
since
yeah,
they've
the
taken
houses
care of
keep
it.
going up, it seems.
They keep going up, which in the end, I feel like reality is going to assert itself. Like in New Orleans, you have similar factors at play in LA. In New Orleans, all these insurance companies left. So you have to go to the state as the insurer of last resort, and it's really not good insurance, and it's expensive. So yeah, of course, the housing values are going down. California in general, I think, is very artificially inflated given the circumstances. When you look at fires like this, you're not just talking about the fire; it's also breathing that.
Well,
That
obviously,
doesn't
yeah.
even just affect people there. It affects
course.
you can smell that all the way into Colorado.
Of
People
course.
smell these fires.
Yep.
Like it's damaging to your health. That far away. There.
Oh yeah, we had
Like
air
what is
quality
that
alerts.
doing to you?
Yeah, when they had the
when it came
Canadian
down from Canada
wildfires,
here, yeah.
we had air quality alerts for about a week.
Right.
In New York, remember the sky turned orange over
Yeah, yeah.
Manhattan
Yeah.
at one time.
Everyone was showing the Blade Runner picture, and it did look exactly like that.
Exactly like it. Absolutely. So, obviously, best wishes to everyone in LA. And we will, of course, have more to say about this story, I imagine, in the days to come. All right, let's go to some super chats, and then we'll go to our second fire story of the evening. Let's go here. We got, thank you, Malcolm, for sending those. Kate, thanks for the $9.99. Please send positive thoughts to my friend John and Lauren, who are evacuating from Pasadena with their 8 rescued dachshunds and 20-plus birds. Oh, my God. Well, yes, of course.
Damn. Wow.
Of course, best wishes to them. Prayers to all affected by stupid water admin. Thank you, Kate, and best wishes to you and all the family there, birds, dogs, and all. AD, thanks for the donation. What would it mean to you and your family if the Democrats stopped being so mean to you and your family? There you go. Good one. Eric Rousseau, you're an Angelino, if I remember, Eric. The fire hydrants went dry fighting the fires in L.A. Also, ICE is doing massive roundups of illegal farm workers across the state. Is that happening already? I did not hear about that. I'll have to look that up. Michael Castillo, the fire department used over 1 million gallons of water, which they have ran out of. KFI out of Los Angeles. P. Walker, what else could the LA mayor have done except get in the way? Maybe it was better she was out of the country. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what her physical presence could have done, although politically, you got to be on the ground, obviously.
Yeah.
But also,
like you just shouldn't even book a trip during fire season if you're the mayor of Los Angeles.
Yeah, or I mean, you could cancel it if you have a warning. I mean, that's the thing is, to the extent to which this damage could have been mitigated, to me, that's a bit of an open question. What's not an open question is they could have warned people in advance, and they could have turned the power. Like you could have taken some common sense measures, which it seems like very little, if any, were actually taken. All right, so we will pick up on these. Russ, you got the text, right? You see where I'm reading those from? You'll pick up at Brendan, the next one, after this next piece here. Okay, cool.
Okay.
All righty. I'm going to set this one up again. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show, everyone. Keaton Weiss and Russ Dobular in for Jimmy this week. We are, of course, talking about the devastating fires in Southern California. Donald Trump blames Gavin Newsom for California wildfires reigniting, water management disputes. This write-up from Forbes, President-elect Donald Trump blamed his political nemesis, California Governor Gavin Newsom, for the devastating Los Angeles County wildfires on Wednesday, reigniting his years-long criticism that California has mismanaged its water distribution system. Trump said Newsom refused to approve a water management plan that would have allowed millions of gallons of water to flow daily into many parts of California to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt, he wrote on Truth Social. He's got a flair for humor even under these circumstances.
We are so back.
Yeah, we're so back. That's right. Governor Gavin Newsom refused to sign the water restoration declaration put before him that would have allowed millions of gallons of water from excess rain and snow melt from the north to flow daily into many parts of California, including the areas that are currently burning in a virtually apocalyptic way. He wanted to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt by giving it less water. Parentheses, it didn't work. Didn't even work for the smelt, but didn't care about the people of California. Now the ultimate price is being paid. I will demand that this incompetent governor allow beautiful, clean, fresh water to flow into California. He is the blame for this. On top of it all, no water for fire hydrants, not firefighting planes. A true disaster. Trump for years has argued that the state should divert more water from Northern California, where most of the state's water comes from, to farmers in Southern California and the Central Valley, claiming it would moisten the ground and prevent fires, rather than sending a portion through the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta to preserve wildlife that live there, including smelts. See, I'm a little concerned that the smelt are going to be the kind of scapegoat in all of this. Remember, folks, it's not the smelt's fault. The smelt didn't do anything. They're just cute little
like
fish.
Yeah, they're like migrant fish.
Yeah, exactly.
They're the migrant fish of this debate.
They're just trying to make their way in the world, just like all of us. Trump revived the debate during his 2024 campaign and said in September he would withhold federal wildfire aid to California if elected unless Newsom agreed to transport more water to farmers. If he doesn't sign those papers, we won't give him money to put out all his fires, Trump said in September. During his 2016 campaign, he used the groundwater debate in an appeal to California farmers, and during his presidency, his administration issued a rule reversing scientific findings incorporated in the Endangered Species Act that prioritizes protections for smelt over immigration systems in times of droughts. Over
immigration systems is quite a bit different.
Yeah, you put that in my head. That's why. Over irrigation systems in times of drought, according to the New York Times. So that Forbes article links to this Times article from October 2019. See, there's a cute little fish. That is a smelt. That is the fish in question. Trump administration moves to lift protections for fish.
Looks like a job-taking fish to me.
Yeah, exactly. Trump administration moves to lift protections for fish and divert water to farms. So this is the article linked to in the Forbes piece, just for some backstory on this, because this gets a little bit complicated. It seems like the declaration that Trump said Newsom did not act on here, refused to sign the water restoration declaration. It appears no such declaration exists in writing, so that's why you always got to kind of look at this. But it is true that Trump and Newsom have been feuding over the lack of water being supplied from north to south, dating back many years. So overall, you know, what Trump is saying here is not total bullshit. Like, there is something there. The Trump administration on Tuesday, remember this is back in October 2019, moved to weaken protections for a threatened California fish, a change that would allow large amounts of water to be diverted from the San Francisco Bay Delta to irrigate arid farmland and could harm the region's fragile ecosystem. The plan, which administration officials expect to be finalized in January, is a major victory for a wealthy group called Group of California Farmers that had lobbied to weaken protections on the fish the Delta smelt. It also might intensify ethics questions about Interior Secretary David Bernhardt, who was the lobbyist for those farmers until just months before he joined the Trump administration. The Delta smelt, an unassuming finger-sized fish with little utility. See, so he was right. So it is kind of a worthless fish. I mean, no offense to the smelt, but they are corroborating that. Maybe this is where he got it from. I read it in the New York Times.
Can't put a harness on it and get it to pull a plow.
Exactly.
Fuck it.
No. That fish does seem kind of useless. The Delta smelt, an unassuming finger-sized fish with little utility beyond its role as an environmental sentry, has been at the center of California's water wars for nearly 3 decades. The biological opinion, released jointly on Tuesday by the Interior Department and the Commerce Department, reverses scientific findings made a decade ago, which granted Endangered Species Act protections for certain types of West Coast salmon and, of course, the smelt. Those protections ensured that the California rivers and bays in which the fish swim would get preference over irrigation systems in times of drought. So, seems to me, and I'm not going to, pretend to be an expert on this, it seems to me that there is some truth to what Trump is saying, which is that he's been saying for years that Southern California is not getting enough water. Now, as I said in the previous segment, I am not in a position to tell you one way or another what kind of difference that would have made. Because at the end of the day, you had record winds and almost a year-long droughts. So I can't sit here and tell you that but for the protection of the smelt, this would not have happened. I can't tell you that. But he's not wrong. Like he is referencing years of arguments that he's tried to make that they're not getting enough water in Southern California to deal with fires. So that's true. That seems to check out more than not. Trump had claimed that diverting water through the river delta to the Pacific Ocean has dried up California's forests and fueled wildfires, though most of the state's wildfires do not occur on the farmland Trump has argued should have access to the excess water, the Times noted. Okay, so what they're saying here is that even if you had diverted that water, it would not have necessarily helped to mitigate the fire. Now, obviously, the more water you have in reservoirs and things like that for hydrants and stuff like that, obviously that comes into play. So like I said, what Trump said was not 100% true, but it was not false either. It's kind of a mixed bag. I ultimately think it's more true than not, given his history of making these kinds of arguments, which we'll get into in just a moment. The wildfires in Los Angeles County are attributed to drier conditions in southern parts of the U.S., leading to drought conditions in Los Angeles combined with strong winds that sparked the fires beginning Tuesday. So what they're saying there is that it probably would not have stopped these fires from starting. More water means more resources to mitigate damage. That's obviously better, but it would not have prevented it outright. But Johnny MAGA pulls a receipt here. Just 4 months ago in L.A. County, Trump spoke about the need for California to send more water downstate. So here's Exhibit A.
You have so much water, and all those fields that are right now barren, the farmers would have all the water they needed. And you could revert water up into the hills where you have all the dead forests, where the forests are so brittle. Because no place is like California. I go to Austria. The head of Austria tells me, we have trees that are much more flammable than what you have in California. We never have forest fires because they maintain their forests. And you have all that water that could be used as water, what they call water flow, where where the land would be damp. And you'd stop many of these horrible fires that are costing billions and billions of dollars by the federal government, etc. So one thing I'm going to do for California, vote for me, California. I'm going to give you safety. I'm going to give you a great border. And I'm going to give you more water than almost anybody has. And the farmers up north are going to be able to use 100% of their land, not 1% of their land.
All right, so there you go. And more recently, of course, on the Rogan show, here's President Trump 3 months ago on the Joe Rogan episode talking about how California refuses to build water reservoirs and manage their forests to prevent wildfires.
We have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why do you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north of water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. I could have water for all of that land, water for your forests. Your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah.
Okay?
Dangerous.
That water could be routed. You could have everything. Oh, not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And, there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it.
Those fires are drier than Melania on January 6th, I tell you.
And all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up, get rid of the leaves, get rid of, leaves that are sitting there for 5 years. And
we'll certainly get rid of the dead fall.
And get rid of the trees that are fallen that are like.
All right, so there's another recent example. But if we go back to 2019, so it was just, 11 days after that Times article came out, here's Donald Trump again. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, has done a terrible job of forest management. I told him from the first day we met that he must clean his forest floors regardless of what his bosses, the environmentalists, demand of him. Must also do burns and cut fire stoppers. Every year, as the fires rage and California burns, it's the same thing, and then he comes to the federal government for financial help, we'll say. No more. Get your act together, Governor. You don't see close to the level of burn in other states, but our teams are working well together in putting these massive and many fires out. Great firefighters. Also, open up the ridiculously closed water lanes coming down from the north. Don't pour it out into the Pacific Ocean. Should be done immediately. California desperately needs water, and you can have it now. Okay,
Isn't this the plot of Chinatown?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So, as you can see, there is a pretty long record of Donald Trump trying to sound the alarm about this. Now, like I said, it's ultimately inconclusive what difference that would have made in this example, but you can't argue with the fact that he has been on this issue for a number of years. And, who's not looking too good right now is Gavin Newsom, especially since here he is. Here's an embarrassing video. So Mays found this and superimposed Newsom's speech onto the wreckage of Southern California. In April 2021, Gavin Newsom explains that wildfire preparedness will be better now that Biden is in office instead of Trump. So this was a few months after Biden took office, and here's Gavin Newsom excited to explain that now that we have the adults back in charge, we're going to be more prepared the next time one of these fires breaks out.
Now is we are committed as a team, as a partnership with the legislature and other state agencies, including now the federal government, no longer a sparring partner, but a working partner. Federal government, where we're not addressing headwinds, but tailwinds in terms of the support, a memorandum of understanding, doubling our respective commitments to vegetation management and forest management and prescribed burns to support the Biden administration with resources, not just rhetoric, to help this collective cause. It's a different paradigm. It's a different framework.
Nicely
done.
Believe me, not good. Not good. So, look, ultimately, it comes down to preparedness again. Someone more versed in the science of irrigation and dams and water infrastructure could do a better job than I could of issuing a final verdict as to what impact the water supply had on this fire. But you see it right there, man. This is devastating to California Democrats at the city level all the way up to Newsom. Devastating to the point where, I mean, it's only a matter of how fresh in the minds of voters this is when he runs. But this is devastating to him. I mean, he's going to run to be president in 4 years, and you have this. I mean, this is an apocalypse. This is an absolute horror. And what I can say is that obviously whatever he did with the water was not adequate. It was not good. They're running out of water in the hydrants. So right. I could render that judgment. I'm not qualified to take it much further than that. But yeah, this is a horrible stain on him and his legacy. And it's going to be rightfully, obviously, a horrible burden when he decides to run for the big office.
Yeah, it's really a party of aristocrats. And one of the reasons this is so damaging to them is because they claim to be a party of technocrats. At the very least, we're a party of technocrats. It's supposed to be what they could do. We're a party of competent management. We're going to make science-based decisions. I remember when Trump brought this up originally, that they needed to rake. Oh, all the late night comics had a field day with, he thinks you can take care of it with rakes. But actually, as you see with the smelt, yeah, it sounds funny when you first hear it, but he actually has a point. Like
For sure.
yourself, I can't say, oh, well, that would definitely take care of it. But at the very least, obviously, you'd have more water coming into that region for the hydrants. It seems like a bit of a stretch that you'd moisten that amount of acreage such that you wouldn't get these fires,
Right,
but
right,
at
right.
least you wouldn't have the fire hydrants running out of water in all likelihood. Now, going back to research I did on California, it is a Frankenstein's monster of water projects that made it possible to put that many people in a desert. Like it's part of the reason they have so many problems, which have been exacerbated in recent years, but these are not new problems for the region, is because they had to cobble together such a system of water diversion, bringing water down from the Rocky Mountains and using it to irrigate fields and also to provide drinking water. It's a Rube Goldberg contraption of water projects that have allowed millions of people to live in a desert in the first place. So you're fighting nature inherently by trying to have large populations like this there. If you want that to succeed, you have to have excellent management. You have to really have excellent science-based, rational management. And the Democrats have simply not provided that. All they have to offer is, ha ha, stupid Republicans. Okay, well, if you're going to play that card every time they make a suggestion, you better be on your game. You better demonstrate, see, we brought in the experts and look how well we handled this. If when the actual moment of truth comes, you're just completely flat-footed and you haven't actually done anything to make the situation better, well, now you look like fools. Now, people don't like the Democrats and their high-handedness and their virtue signaling. If you take away the technocratic sales pitch, what do you have? Nothing.
Right, of course. And obviously, that's what they're left with here. Now, Jimmy was talking to me earlier today, shortly before we went on, about a ballot measure in the mid-2010s
right.
that would have allowed for, I believe, $7.5 billion of new reservoir construction. Where's
that? Was approved, right?
Where
but
was
they
that?
didn't
Yeah,
do
well,
it,
yeah, it
he
was approved. Well, it was approved.
Yeah,
It was a ballot measure, so the people
Right.
voted for it.
Right,
It
right.
wasn't like
Right.
some.
But that's what
long
I'm
bureaucratic
saying.
process. Right.
It was passed.
It was passed. And so, where is that? Obviously, they're going to blame the slowness of the bureaucratic process. Okay, that was a decade ago. If they're going to present themselves as the adults in charge, the competent professionals, and the Democrats are going to be screaming climate change is the main culprit here. Okay, so if you believe that, let's just say you believe that. If you believe that and you believe the clock is ticking, then you're going to need some water down there pretty soon, right? And so where is it? There was obviously, it's not debatable, not enough water to do essentially the bare minimum. I mean, the bare minimum. We saw in the last segment, you have firefighters up in the hills trying to get these fires out, and they radio in, there's no more water here. There's nothing we could do. I mean, I believe it's an open question as to, okay, the scale of this event, how feasible is it under any circumstance to actually meet the moment and actually extinguish the fire? Like, is that even possible? To me, that's an open question.
Well,
to me,
that's
you
what
have to
I'm
have a
saying.
little
Right.
humility in the face of nature, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't critique the people presiding over these systems.
Sure.
The bare minimum has to be there. Water in the fire hydrants. After Hurricane Katrina, I remember seeing some, George W. Bush apologist hack on one of the shows talking about how about we have some humility in the face of Mother Nature because this was a devastating storm. Yeah, we know. That doesn't absolve political figures of their responsibility to mitigate the damage. And I would say the most egregious failure here was in the preparation. I hate to be a broken record about this, but you had more dangerous winds than you had in over a decade, combined with almost a year-long drought, combined with the fact that you've seen devastating wildfires in this area many times a year over the past few years. That should have been a siren going off. I mean, that should have raised every alarm bell possible. You should have had people ready to move as soon as you got that forecast for high winds. You should have said, be ready to pack a bag and get what's most valuable and get out, because it's going to be a lot of wind, which means fires can jump from one area to another very, very quickly. Yeah. Very, very quickly. That's why the locations of these fires are as sporadic as they are, because 100-mile wind gust picks up some embers. That takes it. Now you got palm trees on fire. Now you have palm trees falling on power lines falling on houses. I mean, this is happening all over the place. And there's no way to forecast exactly where it's going to hit because of those high winds. So just devastating.
No, I heard there's a mob with pitchforks and torches going to the home waters of the smelt right now.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the thing, everybody. Don't blame the smelt. The smelt are doing the best they can. It's not their fault. Yeah. It's not their fault. All right. Do you have those super chats? You can read a few of those. I want to clear out some exhibits here before we move on. Pick up at Brandon McNamara.